Welcome to WTNB's Info Voter Series. My name is Tony Miles, and I have with me today Grant Starrett. And Grant, tell us, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, tell us what position you're seeking.
Well, I'm running for United States Congress to represent the 4th Congressional District of Tennessee.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So why did you choose that particular position?
Well, our biggest problems are coming from our national government right now. We have $19 trillion in debt and over $70 trillion in unfunded liabilities. I'm a young person, obviously.
Yes.
And I know that if I didn't do something about it, I would have to pay for all these things. And today, the largest generation in the United States is actually millennials, and yet there are
Yes.
only 3 millennials in the United States Congress. And so I would like to go up there and represent not only my generation's interests, but all of America, and making sure that we remain a great country into the next few decades.
What do you see the two most significant issues in that our country's facing? I just want to drill down
Sure.
to those two
Absolutely.
things.
So number one,
Besides debt.
yeah, well, I do
I know that's the big one.
Yeah, I do think that debt is a significant part of what is our
Yes.
problem today. One of the big differences in this race is that my opponent, Congressman Scott DesJarlais, has voted for $700 billion in food stamps over the next 10 years. And for me, that's a program that is not only harmful with regard to taxpayers paying for this, but it's also harmful with regard to recipients, because the average person is on food stamps for 8 years. It's a program that punishes people who seek out work. It's a program that punishes people who try to form families. And so for me, I would like to take the 80 anti-poverty programs that the federal government currently operates and consolidate them into a single program that actually is going to win the war on poverty, actually bring people up out from their difficult circumstances, and encourage them to seek employment, get work, get help, and ultimately, I think we need a safety net and not a hammock.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any more detail how you would propose that particular idea to work?
Sure. So my ideal would be something like a negative income tax. And how that would operate is, like currently, for example, if you were to receive food stamps, and let's just say, to make the math simple, you get $100 of benefits a day.
Okay.
And you go out and you get $20 worth of work. In many circumstances, you'll lose all of your benefits. And so it's never within your incentive to go out there and get work. I think it's a terrible situation. And just as a brief aside, I was knocking on doors in Grundy County. It's the poorest
Okay.
county in Tennessee.
Okay.
1 out of every 3 people in Grundy is on food stamps.
Okay.
I met a farmer, and he said that he'd injured his shoulder last year, and he tried to go down to hire some able-bodied young people, and not one wanted to be caught working. And that's a real tragedy, because that's how food stamps currently operates.
Right.
What I'd like to move towards is something called the negative income tax. And how that operates is, let's assume the same scenario where you get $100 in benefits, and then you seek out a $20 job. The government will then only pay you $90.
Right.
So you're going to still come out ahead as an individual, so you're always incentivized to go out there and seek more work.
Right.
But the government's going to pay out less, and it's going to ladder you out of poverty. Now, you can't be on there indefinitely, but it does mean that you're going to be empowered as an individual to actually go out there and do something. So.
Okay. All right. I have I work with some organizations that provide services to those in need.
Yeah, absolutely.
The disenfranchised.
Yeah.
And so this is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that the services that we have today tend to punish the people that we're trying to help, or it enables them to stay,
That's right.
remain stuck.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be other empowerment type services wrapped around the helping hand.
I completely agree. In my own experience, I've volunteered at food banks. I
Okay.
have given money over the years. I've met with churches and community leaders across the district trying to talk about this issue. And the truth is, if my philosophy of government is successful, then private organizations are going to have to step up as well. And that's going to be something that's why I've been trying to meet with people. And our campaign And I'm running this campaign not only in meeting with churches and community leaders, but we've knocked on over 80,000 doors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
my understanding is that that's more doors than any Tennessee campaign has knocked on in the last 10 years. And so we are going out there and meeting voters day by day at their doors, on their porches. The good news is it's the summer, so we get lemonade and all kinds of other things. In the winter, we used to get baked goods, which was a lot of fun. And
Right.
so that's the kind of campaign I'm running. So,
Okay. Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Grassroots.
that's right.
All right.
That's right.
All
Yeah.
right. We've talked about that. I think I asked you for 2 issues.
Oh, so
and
I'll
we've
give you a
talked
second
about
issue.
One, so
Sure.
what's the second one?
Sure. So I believe we're in the middle of a constitutional crisis.
Okay.
So for the last few years, I actually led an organization called Tennesseans for Judicial Accountability. So what I would do is I'd go around the state and I'd talk about how our judges weren't necessarily following the state constitution or the federal constitution. And I think that's a serious problem. And the main reason for that is if we're not bound by those documents, then the government has no limits. And it's not only important that they're bound by those documents, but they have to be bound by the particular interpretation that the democratic process gave them at the time that they were approved.
Okay.
Because when the people voted for them in the first place, that's when they got their constitutional authority. If judges 100 or 200 years later read into those clauses something that had no meaning for the people at the time, then the government becomes uncabined because the judges can say, well, this random constitutional amendment says that we need to give everyone a puppy. And that is outrageous. And so ultimately, I think that the way that the Constitution frames our governments is a way that is actually designed for the best possible outcomes. And so the truth is that today, the federal government has far exceeded its constitutional boundaries. States, the state of Tennessee today receives between 40 and 50% of its budget from the federal government. And so as a result, we're not able to be the laboratory of democracy that we really should be. We're not able to be as differentiated from other people as we should be.
Okay.
And the core constitutional responsibility of the federal government is to protect us.
Right.
And unfortunately, Congressman Desjardins, my opponent, he has voted for hundreds of millions of dollars in defense cuts. And for me, I think that fundamentally we have a primary obligation to protect us, especially when radical Islam is on the rise, when China is on the rise, and we have a lot of threats around the world. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Well, I want to ask you just one more question.
of course.
Talking directly to me.
Yeah.
Why should I vote for you?
Okay. Well, you should vote for me because I am a next generation conservative who is going to bring my ideas to the table to try and help people across the board. I want to be a champion for people who work, and I want to be a champion for people getting back to work. I'm a Christian, and that's probably the most important thing about me. And I want to bring those values to the position.
I'd like to expand on that a little bit. You mentioned that you're a Christian.
Yeah.
So as we move forward, I'm a Christian also.
Yeah.
So I think this, and being in Cleveland, Tennessee, I think our community would love to hear more about that. So why don't you explain to us what it means to be a Christian for you, and in particular, a Christian candidate? Yeah.
So what it means to be a Christian is that I'm a sinner who can only be saved by Jesus Christ. And I'll tell you my own experience. I grew up in a secular home. I grew up in a secular city. And I was an agnostic growing up because I only wanted to hedge my bets.
Okay.
And when I was in junior high, my grandfather died, and he was the only Christian that I knew. And then my neighbor committed suicide, and I went to school with his kids every single day.
Wow.
And a couple kids in my class told me that they were considering taking their own lives. And so I said, what does it all mean? Why am I here? And so I was a history guy, and both my parents worked, but I used to read history. And so I used to read history of the church.
Yes.
And that brought me to the point where by the time I got to college, I declared myself a sinner and joined a Christian fellowship. And that's where my heart is. That's where that's who I am. So,
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
But I'll circle back to being a Christian politician,
Oh, sure.
because I would love for you to expand on that, because everybody, you know, they love to throw that out.
Yeah, oh, sure.
As we can see in this recent presidential election.
Yeah.
So why don't you share with our voters and with myself in terms of walking your faith out as a Christian politician?
I think that's a great question. And, you know, there was a sermon and that talked about Václav Havel, who was the president of Czechoslovakia. He was a dissident in the Soviet Union. And he said that it was a Christian who really had the humility to tackle politics. Because here's the truth. Anyone who runs for office has a little bit of an ego, right? Because I can say, hey, I want to represent y'all, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, being a Christian means being reminded about who you really are, that you are a sinner, right? And that you are no better than anybody else.
That's right.
And so for me, that's what brings home to me. I don't think I'm better than people across the aisle. I don't think I'm better than any of my fellow citizens, right? I think that we all are in need of saving grace. And for me, my passion is to help people, and is to try and make sure that we have better policies. And I happen to think that the best way to do that is through conservative constitutional principles.
Okay, very good. I will expound on that a little bit. I think it's Psalm 41 that tells us that we are to help the needy, and we are to help the poor. And I think that in terms of what you explained with your policy on that, that is connecting. We are to help them, but we are also to empower them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I just wanted to say that. I'm just going to give you one more opportunity. If you want to look into that camera right there and tell the voters out there why you need their vote.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm asking for your vote. Again, my name is Grant Starrett. I'm running for Congress here in the 4th Congressional District. You can learn more about me by visiting www.grant4tn.com, and that's F-O-R, as in grant4tennessee.com. You can also find out more about me through my Facebook page, which again is just facebook.com/grantfortn. And to just sum it up, I want to make sure that we live within our means. And so I want to make sure that the government is not going to wind up totally out of control. I want to make sure that you're not paying for people not to work, you're paying for people to get back on their feet. I want to make sure that you have the best military in the world to protect us against all threats around the world. And I want to bring my Christian values, as you've seen here today, to the job. So thank you. I really appreciate your vote. Early voting is July 15th through July 30th, and the election day is August 4th. And hopefully I'll see you at your door, because we've already knocked on 80,000. Thank you.
Well, Grant, I just want to say it's been a pleasure having you here today on WTNB. It's been a pleasure talking with you and hearing your heart about what you stand for and what you believe. And thank you for coming by.
Thank you. I look forward to being back.
All right now. So to Cleveland and Bradley County, thank you.